I am absolutely delighted to be doing this. It's actually been a lot more work than I thought putting this together, but I have enjoyed every minute of it. The different things that you're going to see on the walls are just so absolutely gorgeous. It's just been a delight to be just feeling the energy of all these beautiful scenes as I've been looking at them and getting them ready to show you. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here. So this is the beginning of the talk. It's called Queen Nefertari, the Beautiful Companion. And I'm going to be talking today mostly about the tomb of Queen Nefertari. But at the end, I'll also show you a few photos of the Nefertari Temple at Abu Simbel. I wanted to start with just clarifying a couple of words so that we have them sort of as a common vocabulary. So the word hieroglyph is actually two words, and it is, the hiero means holy or sacred, and glyph is a sign or symbol. So the hieroglyphs that we're going to be seeing on the tomb walls are the sacred language, the sacred way of writing. They had other ways of writing, Demotic and Hieratic, which were more for more everyday type things. But this is the sacred writing that we're going to be looking at. Another word that many people don't really understand or know about is the word pharaoh. You know, they talk about the kings of ancient Egypt as being, you know, pharaoh this and pharaoh that. But actually, the word pharaoh comes from the Egyptian word, which is per-ah. And that actually means the great house. So for the ancient Egyptians, they used that the same way we would use, like, the White House issued a statement. And that means that the president issued that statement, but it's not, the White House is different than just the president's, it's the office of that. So that was what Pharaoh meant. Of course, now it gets used just to mean an ancient Egyptian king. So throughout the presentation, if you see in parentheses in a little bit smaller letters, those are going to be the Egyptian words. So for some of you who've been coming on these tours repeatedly or studying Egypt on your own, then you would be interested in this. For those of you who are new to this, you can just ignore that stuff. Okay? So now, which of the ancient Egyptian queens do you already know? Well, I would take a wild guess and say that you know Nefertiti and Cleopatra. Those are the ones that most people are familiar with. And Nefertari is often confused with Nefertiti. And there's a good reason for that. And that is that they both have that word Nefer at the beginning. So this symbol here that you see, it looks like a little lute, like sort of like a guitar instrument, something like that. That is the hieroglyph for this word, Nefer. So Nefertiti's name is translated, the beautiful one has come. And Nefertari's name is translated, the beautiful companion. So I think it'd be good to know, first of all, about her name. Now, in ancient Egypt, the royal names, the names of the kings and queens were represented in this shape here. It's an oblong with a line at the bottom, and we call it a cartouche. We think that it started out just being a label. And you see, if you had, you wanted to put your name on a jar or something like that, you could write your name on this, and then you tie a little string around here, and then tie that string around the jar or whatever item you wanted to label. That shape here with the circle and the line is also the hieroglyph for eternity. So by putting your name in that shape, that would mean that you have eternal life. Okay, so when the Napoleon's army came to Egypt and they saw these shapes on the wall, and of course nobody knew what they meant, but they thought that it looked like their powder cartridges. And so, the ammunition that they used. And the word for that in French is cartouche. So that's why they're called cartouches up to this day. Okay, so let's look at the cartouche of Nefertari. So this is going to be her name, right? So you've already learned that this is Nefer, right? This little guitar-like thing. And now in ancient Egyptian language, these hieroglyphs, it could either be the whole concept like this, Nefer, or it could be an alphabetical symbol like our letters, A, B, C, D, E, like that. So this little half circle is the letter T. And it also can be used to make something feminine, just like we have today. We have George, Georgette, Paul, Paulette. The T makes something feminine. So every time you see this, it doesn't mean that that's definitely a feminine word, but that is how they make it feminine. So we have the T, and then we have a feather, and they didn't actually write the vowels in ancient Egyptian language, but the feather is probably one of the closest to a vowel sound. So it could be an E, I, A. We're just sort of guessing on that, but we think that's what it is. And then the next one is the R. Now this one's easy because it looks just like a mouth, and it's going yeah? So, and then we have the last, which is 2 lines. Now that's an abbreviation for 2 of the feathers. Now, if you look over here, you see how nice that it feels, really balanced, and it's artistically pleasing, right? Now, if they had done 2 more feathers, it would have looked kind of messy, yeah? So the Egyptians were always wanting things to look beautiful, balanced, harmonious. So they got to choose how they would write things sometimes. So in this case, for Nefertari's name, they just put the 2 lines for the 2 feathers. So we have Nefertari. That's her name. Now, if we look at the bottom part of the cartouche, we have this, and this is a vulture, and this is the goddess Mut. She's the mother goddess, we still, even in German, the word for mother is Mutter. Yeah, so she's, just think of her as the mother here, but she's a goddess. And underneath that, we have the zigzag line and this little shape here. And that is a shape for beloved, and the zigzag line is of. So that gives us beloved of the goddess Mut. Now, if we look at the whole cartouche, there are 2 snakes on either side. You think, what are those snakes doing here, right? Well, those snakes are actually goddesses. When they're in that shape, what's called the rearing cobra, that is the symbol for goddess. And same way we would say Kleenex for facial tissue, it is a specific goddess, but it's also just can be used to say goddess in general. So in this case, it's the goddess of Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. They're the 2 protective goddesses. Now, I know that because I read the name up here, but they have on the crowns of Upper and Lower. This is actually the double crown, and this is Lower Egypt. So let's look at it. Here we have Nefertari, beloved of Mut. And then we also have it over here. So when we see it on the wall like this, it's telling us, who is that? So now you see, when you see this person here and you see this shape, you know that that's her name, okay? But if you look at it closely, it looks a little different. The 2 cartouches look a little different. The one on the left has this shape here, and it means Mary, just like Jesus's mother, Mary. You know, a lot of women had the name Mary because it means love or beloved. And in this case, it's a hoe, like a grub hoe for loosening up the soil when you're farming. And this one has the shape, which is like a water canal, or it could be a groove and a spinning wheel type thing. Both of those mean Mary. They can be, you can use either one, and either way, it still is the same meaning. The other thing is, you'll notice that on this one, the vulture was down here, and on this one, the vulture is at the top. So you see, things aren't always done exactly the same way. The artist has some flexibility because he's always trying to make it look beautiful. So here we have it again, just to review. You see how the two of them look. Now, if we look closer at Nefertari, remember this is the vulture. She is wearing what's called the vulture headdress. You see the vulture's head here and the wings. So that is the vulture headdress, and you'll recognize that she wears that a lot. So you'll see it in the tomb. Now, down here, they have that symbol. Remember this was the symbol for eternity. Now the vulture is holding that symbol in her claw. When someone in ancient Egypt here on the walls is holding something in their hand, that means they possess it. So the vulture here, she possesses eternal life, okay? So now, just a few moments ago, when you looked at this, you just thought, well, it looks like a woman, you know, she's got a funny eye and it looks nice, right? But now in a very short period of time, you know that this symbol means that it's her name. You know how to read her name, Nefertari, beloved of Mut. You know she's wearing the vulture headdress, and that the vulture is got the eternity sign in her hand. So now, was Nefertari an important historical figure? Well, she seems to have a very big fan club in the year 2020. If we put her, she has a lot of merch, as they say, for the YouTubers. You'd think that she was a famous YouTuber. If you went on Amazon and you put in Nefertari, all kinds of stuff would come up. Nefertari this and Nefertari that. She must be famous, right? You have a notebook and statues and posters, all kinds of merchandise, Nefertari this and that, Nefertari knapsacks and shower curtains and all kinds of stuff, right? And unfortunately, there is some stuff that is not so great here. This is a doormat. This is a bath mat. And these, of course, are socks. Now, if an ancient Egyptian were to see this, they would be absolutely enraged. And the reason why is because in ancient Egypt, anything that was under your feet was an insult. Anything that, you know, if you go to a museum and you see the statues and you look under their feet, you'll see representations of their enemies. You know, so anything which is under your feet is something that you are not feeling good about at all, okay? And so the idea that people are going to be scuffing their feet on the picture of Nefertari is pretty outrageous. Anyway, the t-shirts are fine. And of course, there are Nefertari books. And guess what we have here? A new book coming soon by Ruth Shilling. So anyway, I hope that you all will enjoy this book. It'll be on Amazon in a week or two. And if you put my name into Amazon and then pick one of the books that I have already authored and then click on my name, it'll take you to my author page and then just click follow. And as soon as that book comes out, they will send you an email telling you that it's now ready for purchase in time for Christmas, of course. So There are also Nefertari Papyruses. Now, if you look at these 5, they're all the same scene, and it's one of the scenes that you will see on the tomb, but they're just painted by different artists. Likewise, here's another set of papyruses where people have copied different scenes. And here are 2 more. So you'll see the originals of these when we go into the tomb. And of course, for the year 2020, we have to have a Nefertari mask, right? So now, was Nefertari an important historical figure? Well, not really, to be honest. In the same way that King Tut was not historically very important. He's important to us, and he's probably the pharaoh that people know the most about from ancient Egypt. But the reason why is because we have all those beautiful artifacts that were in his tomb. Well, likewise for Nefertari, because we have this beautiful tomb with these walls, and also the temple in Abu Simbel, we do know about her. Okay, but she's not a queen that made a big difference like Hatshepsut or Nefertiti or Cleopatra, one of these. But she certainly is important to us for what we have as far as, all these beautiful artwork. So now, where does Nefertari fit into ancient Egyptian history? Those of you that know me and have been to Egypt with me know that one of my pet peeves is that if you watch these shows on TV, they seem to represent ancient Egypt as though it all happened within 100 years and that things never changed. And actually, we're looking at 3,000 years of history. Sometimes it was unified, sometimes it was not unified. There were times when we had the intermediate periods where things were just chaos. So it wasn't just this all of a sudden, ancient Egypt. It was 3,000 years of history. So where does Nefertari fit into that? Well, if we start with the year that we're in, 2020, and we go back 2,050 years, we come to 30 BCE. That was the end of the reign of the Greeks. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great showed up, and from then 300 years after that, for the next 300 years, the Greek families were the rulers of Egypt. They were Ptolemies and Cleopatras. And the one that we think of as Cleopatra is actually Cleopatra the Seventh. So she was the last of those Greek rulers. She was not Egyptian. She lived in Egypt, but she was Greek. If we go back another 1,000 years, then we find ourselves right in the middle of what we call the New Kingdom. And that is King Tut, which I think that's an easy reference for you because I bet you all know about King Tut. So that going to King Tut is 3,350 years ago. If we go back another 1,000 years, we're getting into the Pyramid Age. So we're focusing today on the New Kingdom because that's where we find Nefertari. Now, for those of you who are new to the Egyptian history, you can ignore a lot of this. I just put it in for those of you who are already been studying some of this stuff. So here we have King Tut in the middle, right? And earlier than that, before that, is Nefertiti with Akhenaten. And after that is Nefertari. Now, Nefertari was married to a king called Ramses II or Ramses the Great. And he lived to be well over 90 years old. So he reigned for a long time. Nefertiti died in her early 40s, we believe. Now, Nefertari married Ramses before he became king, and she was his first wife, and she had the role of great royal wife. Now, many times you hear the tour guides in Egypt and stuff, they'll say, oh, well, you know, she was his favorite wife and things. Well, we don't really know if she was his favorite or not. I mean, he had a name for her, she who for whom the sun rises and sets. So that sounds pretty romantic. But what we do know is that she was the first and the great royal wife, and her firstborn child, a son, was therefore the heir to the throne. So a great royal wife is a position, sort of like vice president is a position. He did have another wife during the time he was married to Nefertari, and then he had many, many more wives after that. He had, you know, like 100 children and all kinds of stuff. As it turned out, he outlived the sons of Nefertari that would have become king, so it wasn't his sons, her sons that became the next king. So here we have just a little review. Nefertiti and Nefertari they're born like 70 years apart, so you can kind of think of them as being in the same century. But Cleopatra is 1,300 years later, so she's in a whole different period of history. So we're on to reading the walls. Okay, this is very important here. Now let's just a little review. We have Nefertari, beloved of Mut, right? Now, these are two names that are going to be very worthwhile to remember. These are the way the names are written in hieroglyphs. This one is Osiris, so he has that throne with the eye, and then this is a seated god here, a seated deity. And then Isis has the throne with that half circle, the T sound, and the egg. Now, one of the interesting things is Osiris is a god, and Isis is his consort or wife. They're god and goddess. But on the tomb walls, they're going to be using the name of Osiris in a different way. They're going to be using his name like an adjective or as an adjective. So when they say the Osiris this or the Osiris that, they mean the one who died and was reborn. This comes from a story about Osiris who was killed and then came back to life, which we're not going to go into today, but certainly easy to look that up and read it. Okay, another thing that would be nice to know is this little combination of hieroglyphs here. Those hieroglyphs together mean words spoken by. So it's kind of like a quotation mark or a cartoon where you have the little call out bubble. So that is going to be very helpful if we want to know who this is. So if I see this and I say, who is this? Which god or goddess is it? I'm going to look for this to see the name. So here we go. We look for that. That's words spoken by. And then I see this here, and it's a hawk. So that's Horus. Horus is one of the gods. And then there's the goose with the line, and that is hieroglyphics for son of. And then we have over here Isis. Remember, that was the hieroglyphs we just looked at. So Isis, the goddess Isis. So it's saying this is words spoken by Horus, son of Isis. Now, Horus has a number of different forms, and you're going to be seeing other forms this evening of what we see on the tomb walls. But this particular form we're looking at right now is in the role of Horus, son of Isis. So just to review what those hieroglyphs look like again, remember this is Osiris, and this is what Isis looks like. So now let's look back at that same picture that we've already seen before, okay? So we have here the words spoken by, then this is Osiris, right? So the person has been reborn. Then this one is wife of the king, so that's the queen. And these down here, it's in the feminine form, is great. So that makes this here, words spoken by the great reborn queen, Nefertari, beloved of Mut. Isn't that exciting? Now you see, now you're being able to read even more of what's on the walls. So let's look at them both as a little review here. Words spoken by Horus, son of Isis, and words spoken by the great reborn queen, Nefertari, beloved of Mut. So when you first looked at this, as we said, you would have just thought, oh, there's a woman and everything. Now you know her name, you know she's wearing the vulture headdress, you know who she is and what she's saying. So back in the year 2000, I got an email. Email was new back then. And it had these two things. It had a colon with a part of a parentheses. And I thought, what is that? And I asked the woman who sent me the email, and she said, well, it's a smile. I said, that doesn't look like a smile. And she said, well, it's sideways. Well, of course, now I look at it, it's just obvious. I mean, I can't not see it, right? And in the same way, if someone were to look at a cartoon with an elephant and a donkey, and they're having some kind of interaction, we would know it's a political cartoon, and we would know what those symbols are standing for. If we just looked at it, we said, oh, I love the way they drew that elephant, we could enjoy it from that way, but we'd be missing the point of what they were trying to communicate. So with Egyptian art, many people don't understand that it's not just a pretty picture, it's a communication, it's a language. In the same way that cartoons are telling us something, this is a language of symbols. And if you don't know what those symbols mean, you can just enjoy it as, isn't that beautiful? But you're missing the communication of what's coming about. So this is not trying to look like a pretty picture. It's not trying to look like a photograph. It's a set of symbols that you read, and then those symbols give you a message. Okay, so the symbols that they use are in the forms that they're most easily recognized. So the easiest way for us to know what it is they're trying to express. So now if I showed you this, you might be hard pressed to figure out what I was trying to draw there, okay? But if I showed you this, it would be obvious to you that it was a foot or a boot or something of that sort. It would be immediate that you would see it. Likewise, if I showed you that, you wouldn't necessarily know what I was trying to draw. But if I showed you that, it'd be obvious that it's an eye, yeah? So what they are doing with this art is they're doing just that. The legs and the feet are drawn like this, where we most easily recognize them, yeah? And the face is drawn in profile. And then the crowns are also done that way so that we can see what that looks like. Actually, this one is head on, this one is a profile. And the eyes are done as though we're looking directly at them. And also the shoulders and the necklaces looking directly at them, because that's the easiest way to recognize those things. And so that's the easiest way for us to draw them, because that's the way we actually think. So this is what they're actually doing for these. Now, a good example is if you look at these two hands, you notice there is not a right hand and a left hand. They're just two hands. Well, we don't need to, say, well, this is the right hand and this is left hand. We know she has two arms. We know she has two hands. That's all that they need to show. So now, another thing just to point out, this is just a small difference, is that the skin color of Nefertari is a little bit lighter than the skin color of the god here that she's next to. That's Horus. And in ancient Egypt, the men are represented with a darker skin color and the women with a lighter color. The men are out working outdoors and the women are, inside. Now, here's our picture again. Remember the picture you've already gotten to know quite well? Well, she has her hands up, and notice the hands are the same. There isn't a right hand and a left hand. They're the same hands. And that is a gesture, which is adoration, worship, respect. Okay, when you have the two hands up like that, that is giving that message. When there's one hand up, they're giving a blessing. When there are two hands up, they're doing adoration, worship, respect. It's a show of that. So let's, I'm going to be taking you inside the tomb in the next section. And I'm going to be giving a lot of information about, oh, this god and this goddess on the walls. For many of you, that can just maybe be a little bit too much. So let's just look at what you've learned already. And when we go into the tomb, you can just enjoy the artwork, okay? So we had the King Tut in the New Kingdom, in the middle of the New Kingdom, 1330 BCE. That ancient Egyptian art is a language. It's not just a pretty picture, it's a language. Mary means love or beloved. And this is Nefer. This is the symbol for that, and it means beautiful. This shape is what we call a cartouche. It's a royal name. This is the letter T. The feather is some sort of vowel sound. This is a mouth, and it's going R. The goddess Mut. The vulture headdress. This symbol is words spoken by. This one is Osiris, and when we see it on the wall, it's probably going to be meaning he who died and was reborn, the person who was reborn. Then there's Isis and our eternity symbol, the circle with the line underneath it. So we've covered a lot of material already. So those of you who haven't been spending a lot of time studying ancient Egypt, you can just settle back now and enjoy the beauty of what you're about to see. But for those of you who are interested, I'm going to continue to give you more information. So here we go. We're going to go see the tomb now, the real tomb. So we're in the Valley of the Queens. This is the west bank of the Nile River in Luxor, Egypt. If you see, Egypt is kind of a big a square. It's somewhere around the middle of that. And if you look here, you'll see that there is nothing growing here. Absolutely nothing. And there's a reason for that, because it is so dry, completely dry. Now, I put this picture in here, not just because I wanted to show you how happy our travelers are when they get to go, but look at this, 10 minutes only inside the tomb. I mean, I could give a whole semester class on this one tomb, and we're only going to be in there for 10 minutes. How can that be? Well, there's a reason for that. If you see this hose coming out, it's when we go inside and we breathe, we're bringing moisture into the tomb with our breath. And so they're constantly trying to take that moisture out. So the number of people that can go in are restricted, and the amount of time, and many times it's just plain closed. They close it up. So many of our travelers have not even gotten to go in here because when they came to Egypt, it was simply closed. When it's open, of course, we make it a high priority. The tomb was restored by money from the Getty Foundation. They spent, I think, 8 years restoring it. And so what you'll see, they were not allowed to change the colors. They just cleaned them. And so that's the way it looks today. So we're going inside now. We're going down the steps. And the next photo is going to be somebody standing right here in this doorway, looking down into the first chamber. I didn't have a good photo in color for this, so I did it in black and white. I put this in here because I wanted you to see the size of it, and we're also going to use it as sort of an orientation for where you are in the tomb, okay? So now coming down the stairs, here you can see the look on people's faces here. And this is exactly how I look when I go in. I mean, the very first time I came into this tomb, I was just literally awestruck, and I am each time I come in. The first time I actually started crying. I had never seen anything so beautiful, and it just really moved me. So I need to take a moment here to give a thanks to the people who shared their photos. When I went to do this presentation, I just grabbed the last 3 tours worth of photos of Nefertari. We all share them with each other, and everybody takes the same pictures and they all get mixed up. So I don't know whose pictures are whose. So I just want to thank everyone. If one of your pictures is in here or more, probably Ruth Stocky, then thank you very much for contributing. So we're going to start off. Our first wall is the one right here behind the people. Here we have Osiris lying here on his lion bed, and there are 2 birds on either side. Now remember, this is symbols, right? We're reading the symbols. So this symbol here is the symbol for the name Isis. So I know that this bird is Isis in the form of a bird. And her sister, Nephthys, is here. So they're what they call a kite. It's a sort of like a hawk. It's a bird that catches things. So here they are on either side of Osiris. Behind them is the Bennu bird, the heron. You can see it a little bit more clearly here. And this is often a sign for rebirth. It's from a creation story where they have the Ben stone and the Bennu bird lands on it. It comes up out of the land comes up out of the swamp. So that's the Bennu bird. We don't have a lot of representations of that, so it's special to find it here in this tomb. And I just love this. You can see his little whiskers on here and even coming out of his nose. And the character of this lion, you could tell he's really got personality. You know, they had lions as pets sometimes. So, and the lion's hair has all been put into little clips. This lion is actually one of the deities, and there are 2 lions. There are 2 lions back to back, and they're called the lions of yesterday and tomorrow. And this, the other lion is missing off the wall. But this, you see this red thing, this is the sun. So the sun, the horizon with the sun is between those 2 lions. So you can see that was over here. You can see how the other lion is missing. So we looked at this wall. Now we're going to this wall over here. Now here's Nefertari. How do I know it's Nefertari? Well, look, we've got her cartouche right here. And she's the great queen, right? The great reborn queen. And they're also telling us that she's the lady of the 2 lands. That's Upper and Lower Egypt. She's playing a game which is similar to chess or cribbage. There are some actual artifacts with this game that can be seen in different museums, and it's called Senet. So she's playing the Senet game. Now in front of her, we have a bird with a human head. So what could that be? Well, if you look at it, it looks like Nefertari, doesn't it? The bird looks like Nefertari. If you have ever had an out-of-body experience, you probably were able to fly around and you could think and you could see and you could maybe hear. And so if somebody was trying to make up a symbol for what this was like, they would choose to make a bird and with a human head. Now, we don't know, I don't know, if this is why the ancient Egyptians chose to make this symbol. But it would make sense to me, and depending on what your belief system is, it might or might not. The way that it's translated in Egyptology is the soul or the spirit of the person. And the Ba was said to come to comfort us, comfort the person at night. So here we have the Ba bird and the Senate game. Now we're back to our picture, which shows the first chamber. And now we're going to go around to the right. So buckle up your seatbelts, take a deep breath. And if you were just entering the tomb, this is what you would see. Isn't that just stunning? It just takes your breath away, really. Every bit of the wall has something beautiful on it. And these representations of the deities are practically life-size. The feeling in here is just overwhelming. It's just amazing. So we're going to start here. You see, this is like a doorway, a big opening here doorway. And this is the goddess Salket on the left, and that's me pointing in this direction. So we're going to go that direction. Here is Salket again, and the opposite her is Neith. Now, Salket and Neith are two of the four goddesses that we see around coffins. We have Salket and Neith, and then Isis and Nephthys. So they're sort of like four guardian angels, especially if you've been and seen the King Tut exhibit, you see these four goddesses around the various, the coffins and different things. Also, any museum, any coffin, you will see usually these four goddesses as sort of protective goddesses around that. So this is our next wall. We're going to this, one of my favorites here. On the left, we have Hathor as the goddess of the West. Here's her name, Hathor, and this symbol here on her head is the symbol for the direction of the West, north, south, east, west. Now, in ancient Egypt, if you say the West, you're referring to the afterlife. The sun comes up in the east and goes down in the west. And so anything that is the West is the afterlife. So she is the primary goddess in the afterlife. In front of her, we have Ra Horakti. Now, remember I said that Horus is going to come in different forms? Well, this is also Horus. He's called Horus of the Two Horizons. But in this form, he's also combined with the god Ra, which is the sun. So he's Ra Horakti. We go a little close. Oh, oops. Yeah, remember here we had Horus and he was the son of Isis. And now we have Horus of the Two Horizons with Ra, a combination of Ra and Horus. You can see right here, there's the Ra horizons, and this is the number two horizons. I just thought it was nice to see it closer. It's just so beautiful. Now, we can also notice that this is her right arm, and this is a left hand. So again, it's not about right or left, it's about the gesture. And this is the gesture of blessing or support. So she's giving him her support. Next, we're going to go above this doorway to this here. Now, this is the goddess Nekhbet. She's also a vulture, and the symbols have a way of kind of overlapping. So she's also a mother type image. And this is a good place for you to see about how they write the hieroglyphs. The hieroglyphs can go left to right or right to left. So you see the foot here, that's the letter B as in brother. And over on this side, it goes the opposite way. This is her name, Nekhbet, and this is the symbol for white. So it's saying Nekhbet, the white one. And she is the protective goddess of Upper Egypt. Now they have Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Things come in twos in Egypt. And the Lower Egypt is the Delta area, the lowland, and Upper Egypt is where the land gets higher. So up the Nile. So that was the vulture that we just saw. And then to the left, we have Kepper or Kepri. He's the Scarab Beetle. And this is often representing the sun when it first comes up in the morning. So it's another rebirth symbol. You can see his name up here. Here's the Scarab Beetle. Remember the R, Capuri. And in this case, he has the body of like a person and the head of the beetle. The Scarab Beetle, evidently in regular life, puts its eggs into a dung ball, rolls that dung ball in front of them, and then at night buries it in the sand, and then takes it out in the morning. And so this is the way the sun is buried at night and comes out in the morning. The next wall over here, we're going to this wall now. And let's guess who this is. I bet you don't even have to guess. I bet you'll know. Okay, we have here a cartouche. It says, no, it's going the opposite way now. Remember, it can go left to right or right to left. So it's saying Nefertari, beloved of Mut. And then we have here, this is the queen. This is the great queen. And now they're also saying she's the lady of the two lands. Now we have something else in addition. This is a symbol for truth. And this is saying she's true of voice. Now, when a person passes over, they have to go through what's called the negative confession. They have to say, I did not do this, I did not do that. And so she has to be true when she says that. So she needs to be true of voice. Now, it's interesting. Some of the things they have to say is, I did not steal milk from a baby. But listen to this one. I did not soil the Nile. You see, that's ecology right there, taking care of the natural resources. And this is another interesting one. I did not go in public when I was sick. So you see, back 300 years ago, they already knew about social distancing. So who do you suppose this is? Well, we can look up here, and that's our little quotation mark. And then we have this, and that's this symbol for Isis, and this is goddess. So this is the goddess Isis. Now, if we go a little closer, remember she's got on her vulture headdress, and she has the eternity symbol here in her claw. But look at this. She has a cobra earring on. Yeah, so remember that's the sign for the goddess. It's also the goddess of Lower Egypt. So this could be vulture Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, but it's certainly a fashion. Now we're going to go through that doorway and around to the left. On this wall is the god Ptah. Obviously, that's Nefertari making an offering to him. One of his titles is the Lord of Truth. And pretty much all the male gods are creator gods. Not all of them, but many of them. And each one, there's a different creation story that sort of goes along with each one. Now, with Ptah, the way that he creates the world, and this is the way it's written in the hieroglyph, he created the world with his heart and tongue. Now, what that means is that he had something in his heart and he expressed it. So he is what we could call the patron saint of all the artists and artisans, all the ones that made this beautiful stuff that we're looking at. He was their patron saint, so to speak. The area is Memphis. He was a god of Memphis, and particularly important in the Old Kingdom, but all through ancient Egyptian history. Now, if we look a little closer, remember, this is all symbols, right? This is a language of symbols. His skin is green. Well, that shows fertility, right? Because when things grow, they're green, like plants are growing and they're green. I thought this was particularly interesting, his little fingernails there. Now, so that was Ptah over there. There's a Jed Pillar. And now we're going to the next wall. This is Nefertari with the god Thoth, or Thoth. It depends on how people pronounce it. The Egyptian, he was Jehoshaphat. And he's called the Lord of the Ogdon. This is 8 deities. So this is a different creation story. These are sort of like primordial forces. They're 4 masculine and 4 feminine, making 8 altogether. And they're from the area where Thoth was important. He is the god of wisdom and writing, and becomes Hermes. You know, they talk about Hermetic philosophy and stuff. It's sort of the origins here. And the same way that Ptah was the patron saint for the artisans, Thoth is the patron saint for the scribes. So he's the one who inspires them and helps them. And he can be represented as an ibis, which is a bird, like what we see here, or he can also be represented as a baboon. So moving around the corner, that was Thoth over here. Nefertari is offering, and these are actually all meat here. She's offering to the god Osiris. He was originally the god of farming, and then remember, he died and he was reborn and everything. So he becomes the god of the underworld, and he's also the judge of the dead. We look a little closer, you can see he's holding the shepherd's crook here. That is the hieroglyph for ruler, but that means he's the good shepherd. And he also has this here, this is called the flail. So he who separates the wheat from the chaff. Now, some of you who know the Christian Bible and stuff will recognize those ideas, and you can see that's 1,300 years before Christianity. So these are very basic ideas for us as humans. And remember, he has the green skin because it's about vegetation, things growing, things like that. Now, back to back with him is the god Atum, and between them is this shape here. This is a fan for keeping away the flies. And imagine if you had the fan bearer is next to the king all the time. He gets to hear everything that's going on. So this is a very high position to be the fan bearer, because you know all the secrets, you know everything. So it was a very high position. Moving to the rest of the wall, just so you can see, again, here's Nefertari making offerings in front of Atum. Now, this is his name up here, and it's probably not a coincidence that Atum becomes Adam, like in the creation story of the Bible. This is his hieroglyph up here. That is a sledge. And imagine now you went to the beach and you had a cooler full of drinks and stuff that was really heavy, and somebody had one of those boogie boards with the rope on it, and you just put the cooler on the boogie board, you just pulled it along the sand at the beach. Well, that would work out quite well, right? But imagine if you had a baby stroller and you tried putting that heavy cooler into the baby stroller. Well, that wouldn't work well on the sand of the beach at all, right? So when they moved heavy things in the sand of Egypt, they used these sledges, sort of like a toboggan type thing. And that was how they were able to move those heavy things, much, much more efficient than using wheels or something. So Atum is the one, the god of what's called the Great Enid, the 9. And this is the most common of the creation stories that people will hear from tour guides in Egypt. So we start off with Atum, and Atum creates Shu, which is air, and Tefnut, which is wet air or moisture. And Shu and Tefnut then create Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. Geb and Nut have 4 children, Osiris and Isis, that you've already met. And remember Isis's sister, Nephthys. And then Nephthys has a husband, Set, or Seth. Now, one thing that's interesting to point out here is that Geb is masculine. The earth is masculine, the moon is masculine, and the sun is masculine in ancient Egypt. So it's not like Mother Earth or the moon being feminine. No, all of those are masculine in the Egyptian way of looking at the world. The sky and the stars, the sky with stars is feminine. So the feminine is the space, and the stuff within the space is masculine. Now, this is one of the most famous, I don't know, the artwork, one of the most famous scenes from this tomb, and you will probably see it in a lot of different art books and anything about ancient Egypt. The serenity, the beauty of it is just really something else. Notice how calm everything looks in this picture. Now, do you remember when the very first wall we looked at, we had those two birds, and I said the one over here was Isis and the one over here was Nephthys, and they're called the two sisters. Well, that's what we have again here. This is Isis, this is her hieroglyph, and Nephthys. So the two sisters are here, and the one in the middle is the god Ra. That's what this is telling us. Now, he looks a lot like the potter god Khnum. The potter god is the one who created human bodies out of clay. That's where the idea from the creation story in the Bible comes from. Before the Bible, of course. And sometimes this could be considered the sun at the latter part of the day. So anyway, if we didn't know how to read the hieroglyphs, we might not know who this was. So you can see how it's worthwhile to learn some of these names so you can get more out of these pictures. So I just wanted to show you that one more time, just so you could enjoy the beauty of that. Just, we're so lucky to have this. Now the rest of that down here, they're saying that Osiris is Ra and Ra is Osiris. So in other words, they're saying that in this representation, they have combined Osiris and Ra together. Remember, they combined Horus and Ra together in one of the other pictures. So in ancient Egypt, they're not so careful about this is that and that is that. They don't mind just combining things if they want to. Now, before we go downstairs, we're going to look up at the ceiling, and you can just see that ceiling is covered with stars. Now, if you look closely at these stars, they look like little stick figures, yeah, just like kind of like little paper dolls. And there is a reason for that. Of course, one reason is it's a quick way to make a star, but there's another one, and that is that in ancient Egypt, when a person dies, when a person passes over, they become a star. So when you look up at the sky, one of those is every person that you've ever loved, and they're up there in the sky shining down upon you. It's a lovely, lovely thought. So you see each of these little stars is a person. Isn't that nice? So now we're back into our basic room, our first chamber again, and now we're going to go down the stairs, okay? Now, of course, they don't let you just go down the stairs. It's just full of more beautiful scenes. So here behind me, we'll start with that. That's the Jed Pillar. That's one of the representations of Osiris. And in front of that is the goddess Ma'at. Now, her hieroglyph is here. It says words spoken by. This is truth, the goddess of truth. And you see, this is T, making it feminine. So we have the goose, and she's the daughter of Ra. In front of her is Salket. She was one of the four goddesses, remember, around the coffins. Her hieroglyph is up here. This is one of the S signs. Remember, for the mouth, the R, and this is Kt, Salket. Now, the way she's often, the spelling of her name is with an L usually, but you can see from looking at the hieroglyph that it's an R. And the reason for that is that R's and L's are sort of interchangeable here. There wasn't a distinction between those two. And even now when you think, we have the word Leo and Rio and royal and lion. Those are all actually sort of similar words, that just the R and the L. Some languages, other languages also don't distinguish between R and L. Now on Salket's head is a scorpion. I remember these different gods and goddesses, they have different animals that they're related to. And so with Salket, it is the scorpion. She's the scorpion goddess. So remember we had Ma'at down here, here's Salket, and in front of her is Hathor, and in front of that is Nefertari, offering to all of them. Now we have a Hathor, this is her hieroglyph up here. Hathor's animal is the cow. So you can see that she has a crown with cow's horns, and then there's the solar disk. So that's the Hathor crown. Now, if we look closely, interestingly enough, in this particular scene, she has on the vulture headdress, and she has the uraeus, the rearing cobra earring as well. But this is Hathor. And here's the better picture. You know, it's a narrow passage, so it's hard to get everything into the pictures here. And this is Nefertari, of course, making offerings to Hathor. Now, if you remember, there were the papyruses that we could get on Amazon, and now you can see where they got the ideas, but they kind of flipped it around. This was Ma'at, and they turned Hathor around and made it look like she's the queen, but actually they took it from this and this, turned this around, but you can see the queen is actually this one. Okay, so now on the opposite wall, still on the stairs there, we have Ma'at again. She has her wings outstretched like she's giving you a big hug. And we have the eternity symbol giving eternal life to Nefertari. In front of them is Nephthys, the sister of Isis. Here's her hieroglyph. And here is Isis, the sister of Nephthys, and Nefertari, of course, giving them offerings. A little further down the stairs, we have a snake. Now, you might think, oh, that must be a bad symbol, but actually this is a good snake. You see how nicely she's smiling? She's a good snake. This is Wajid, the goddess of Lower Egypt, sometimes called the green one. And you see, she possesses eternal life. You see, she has the eternal symbol. And again, she's doing that hugging gesture as she's got her arms open, her wings open, and giving eternity to Queen Nefertari, the golden Queen Nefertari. Underneath, you see she's up there. Underneath her, we have Anubis. He's Inpu in the ancient Egyptian. He's associated with embalming and guiding in the afterlife. There is another deity that looks just the same, and he's called Web-Waret, who is the opener of the ways. Remember how things get kind of mixed up as far as there's an overlap from one deity to another here. And at the bottom of those steps, we have above the doorway, Ma'at. That was the other papyrus we saw at the beginning. And remember, she is the word spoken by. Here's the truth, Ma'at, the goddess Ma'at, the daughter of Ra. And now we're going down into the burial chamber. And there are pillars on each side. So that's the first thing we're going to be looking at. This is the same pillar, just from two different angles, and we're entering in through here. The other pillar is over on this side here. So let's have a look. This is a priest. Now, how do we know that? Well, he has on this leopard skin. So that means that he is a priest. He also has what's called the side lock of youth. So it's a young man. Okay, so it's a young priest. And then by looking at the hieroglyphs, we see that it is Horus again in a different version. And this is the young Horus who protected his mother. That's from one of the stories about the trials that Horus went through with Set and things like that. So here he is, the young Horus who protected his mother as a priest. So he's on the left, and on the other side, again, we have another version of Horus, and this is Horus, the avenger or savior of his father. Interesting that they both have that leopard skin on, but one is wearing it frontwards and one is wearing it backwards, and I don't know what that means, but I just see it. Now, if you remember that black thing that looked like a Doberman pinscher, that's actually supposed to be, they always said it was a jackal. And just a few years ago, they did some sort of, some researchers did some DNA testing, and they said that it's actually an African wolf. So it looks like a Doberman in a way, but that's Anubis, right? So here we have Anubis, and it just has the head with the human body. Just like, remember, Kepler, the Scarab Beetle, it just had the head, or it can be the whole thing. Now this one is Hathor, and you see she's wearing the West, the goddess of the West, and she's giving blessings to Nepetary. And I thought it'd be interesting for you all to see this. This is a papyrus life jacket. There are actually illustrations where they show people in boats wearing these things. And it is, it's the hieroglyph is Sa, and it means protection. You see that a lot on the walls, and it's an easy one to remember. Another interesting, this is one of the side of one of the pillars, and another interesting thing about this one, this is the only pillar where I've seen this. If you look up closely, it looks like she has tattoos. And sure enough, they have done research on mummies from ancient Egypt, and some of them do have tattoos. So these might be real tattoos, or they might just be henna, who knows. Another thing to point out here is notice that she is skin colored, and the goddess is gold. In ancient Egypt, when someone becomes golden, they become fully divine. So it's showing you that the goddess is divine here. You can see that again, the goddess is in yellow, and she's in a more of a flesh color here. Now, this is Hathor again. She's got her cow's horns on, and that's just a beautiful, nice, clear representation of them. And notice how the gods and goddesses are so helpful and supportive. The idea is that in the afterlife, there is all this support there. It's a very positive kind of thing. So it's a nice idea. There's the hieroglyph for Hathor, and you might recognize this down here. That was the protection, the life jacket. Now, if we look at these two goddesses, they look like the same goddess. They have same clothing, they have the same headdress. How would we know who they are? Well, this is the Hathor crown, but Isis wears the Hathor crown a lot. So we have to look, and we see that sure enough, this is telling us that this one is Isis, and this one is Hathor. So the only way you really know who these different deities are is if you learn their names, and then you can identify them for sure. These are two different pillars, and that's Osiris. They're just so beautiful. He's got his green skin, and he's got the shepherd's crook as a ruler, and the royal flail. So those are just so nice. Another side of that pillar is the goddess Salket. Again, this is a much clearer version of her hieroglyph. You can see with the R, and she has the scorpion on her head. And interestingly enough, this scorpion has little ankhs here. Here's Ma'at, the goddess of truth, and she has the feather of truth on her head. Now, here, just looking at these glyphs, this is the papyrus life jacket again, protection. This is the Ankh, which probably is the most common hieroglyph that people would know. It is translated as life, but it's actually like chi or prana, life force, energy. And this one is the Jed Pillar, and it means stability. Just two more pictures here. This one is probably Ra, because when we saw him upstairs, he was in this form. But because there isn't a hieroglyph to tell us, maybe it could be the god Khnum, the creator god from the southern part of Egypt. And this one I just put in, somebody took this. Don't think I took this one. I don't think so anyway. Just the artwork here is just so stunning. When you think this is 3,000 years, 3,300 years ago, and you know, how could it be better? I mean, it's just such a perfect drawing. So now it's time to leave the tomb, and on the way out, we'll say goodbye to Isis here on the side. And whoops, I went too fast there. There's Anubis, yeah. Anubis, and up above him, the Cobra goddess of Lower Egypt. And at the top of the steps, we have the two directional goddesses, Neith here and Sauket there. So up we go, up the stairs. And then we have another set of stairs, and we're into the light of day. So I hope you've enjoyed that look at Nefertari's tomb. We're going to go to Abu Simbel now, but wasn't it just beautiful? So here's Abu Simbel. Now, if we look at a map of Egypt, Abu Simbel is way down in the south. It's actually part of what was the land of Nubia. And look over here in the corner. That is a person. That shows you how big this is. Now, if you've ever been to Mount Rushmore and they cut into the stone there, this is done in that same way. It's there was a cliff, you know, a big stone cliff going down to the river, and this was cut right into the living rock. Now, there were two caves, and one of the caves was turned into a temple for Ramses II, Nefertari's husband. When you go inside that temple, this is what it looks like. Notice the vulture hawk are flying over your head as you come in. And the light comes right through that temple all the way up to the back. And twice a year, it just goes directly back into the sanctuary. In the back there are four deities: Ptah, Amun, Ra, Ramses himself, portrayed there on equal footing with the gods, and Ra Horakti. I remember that was Horus with Ra in a combination. We saw that in the tomb. So that was, he certainly had a high opinion of himself to put himself up there with the gods. Now, when the high dam was built, it was then it dammed up the Nile, so the Nile no longer flooded in Egypt. And it also created, it was a hydroelectric dam, so it created electricity for Egypt. But it also, in order to do that, when they dammed up the river, it made a huge lake behind it. And that would have submerged these temples. So there was a big international effort with UNESCO, and they moved the temples, believe it or not. They actually cut into the rock, and bit by bit, they brought them up to higher ground, and they made these little fake hills, one for each temple, and they put the temples into those. Okay, so what we see today is that amazing work that they did. It was in 1964 to 1968 that they did that. Now, I said that there were two caves originally, And those caves were sacred to the goddess, and it was thought that there were two goddesses probably, we think, and that was the ones that created the annual flooding of the Nile. So that was these goddesses were very important. So this was a goddess site, and think about it. So you have a site which is sacred to the goddesses, that creates the water that gives you life because of the flooding. And when it doesn't flood, you have drought and all kinds of terrible things. And Ramses decides he's going to build a temple and dedicate it to himself and some male gods. How do you suppose that's going to set with the goddesses? Well, just to play it safe, he probably thought it'd be good to have one of the caves be dedicated to a goddess. So it was dedicated to the goddess Hathor. And because his temple was, dedicated to him, the goddess temple was dedicated to Nefertari. Now, we don't know that for sure, but just kind of putting some of the facts together, you can see how it would make sense that he would feel it was important to have a goddess temple on this site. Now, this little person here, for the people in Rhode Island who know Mimi Sammis, the artist that created that beautiful sculpture in front of Narragansett Beach, that's Mimi. She came with us to Egypt. And so also to note here, this is Nefertari and Ramses II. And notice that they're in a similar size. So she's being shown on equal footing with him in this. And when Mimi goes inside the temple here, you can see the size of it. It's small, but it's quite wonderful inside. And remember, the Hathor's animal is the cow. And we saw where she just had the cow's horns on the top. And she can also be represented as an actual cow. So that's how we see her here. And she has a crown on. This is on another wall, again, the Hathor as a cow. And now we're going to go over here, okay? Now in the shadow is Nefertari, and you can see her hands, and in front of her is the goddess Hathor. We know this is Nefertari because we recognize her cartouche, right? And we also recognize the hieroglyph for Hathor. And now I want to point this out here. What she has in her hand is what we call a sistrum. And that's a rattle for the priestesses of Hathor that they would use for their ceremonies and things like that. And so the pillars in this temple are sistrums. They're in the shape of sistrums. This is the handle here, and then it has the head of Hathor. And in this case, you see she has little cow's ears. Okay, that's another way of representing her, with the face of a woman, but with the cow's ears. You can see the pillars in this picture also. There is something that's a little interesting on this in this temple that we did not see in the tomb, and this is Nefertari offering to the goddess Anukus. She is a local goddess for this particular region. And this is also very important and interesting representation. If we look closely, this is the king in the center, and this is Set and Horus. Now, I don't know whether you remember, but back when I was telling you about the story with Osiris, Isis, Nephthys, and Set, I said we wouldn't see Set until we come to Abu Simbel. And so here he is. We're getting to see him now. Set is the god of opposition. He is red. The color that goes along with him is red because he represents the desert, the red land. And the red land, of course, is very harsh, very difficult. And he is the one who teaches the king how to fight. If you want to have big muscles and you go to the gym, you lift weights. You have to have opposition to become as strong as you could be. And that's where Set comes in. He's red, he has cloven hooves, and he becomes the prototype for Satan in Christianity many years later. Now, Horus, his ancient Egyptian name is Heru, and he is a hero. Now, he's the original superhero. He's associated with the Black Land, you know, the Nile, the rich Nile fertile soil, which is the easy life. And he becomes the superhero. You can fight against anything that needs to be, any wrongs that need to be righted. And he has a series of fights with Set as the evil, you know, Uncle Set. And you probably know that from Star Wars or some of these movies. So that's the typical story here. This is our last scene. This is a Nefertari, of course, in the center. We have Hathor on the left, Isis on the right, and they look like supermodels, don't they? You see, with the super long legs, and this was the idea of feminine beauty, evidently at that time. This is 3,300 years ago. And if we go a little closer here, remember I said that when someone becomes golden, they become fully divine. And in this picture, it looks as though Nefertari has become golden. So I thought that was a nice way to end the talk here about Nefertari. And I wanted to do a shout out to Lisa, who is the one who asked me to come and give this lecture. She's the president of the board of the museum. Just a reminder that there's going to be these wonderful new book coming out. And I also have my ancient Egyptian cards. If we were at the museum, I'd have them available for sale. This is what they look like. And now I'll turn it over to our moderator, and she'll tell you about how we're going to do the questions.